And we are good to go. Okay, so welcome to our next session. I'm Laura Walker, but the star of our show today is Siobhan. She will cringe at this moment. One of the most humble people I think I've ever met. So today's conversation is really around the evolving of career practice to remain sustainable as a sustainable profession. Now, Siobhan, as probably many of us know, is the professor for career development based in the University of Derby, but also has many other strings to her bow, which are all very relevant to this topic. So I'm optimistic and in fact determined and sure that she's going to bring lots of fascinating practical, but also grounded in evidence insights for us today. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Siobhan.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us today. Really pleased to be here. I just want to introduce my colleague in the right-hand corner, which is Dr. Nalini Tamba, who works at the University of Nottingham. She's head of strategic development there and previously was the head of the University Career Service. Unfortunately, she's not with us today, but we sort of co-constructed this workshop and it felt appropriate that she's here in spirit, if not in physicality. So thank you for joining us. Can I just ask Emma, how many people have we got online with us, if I can just get a sense? And welcome, online colleagues. And I'm sorry I can't see you, feel you, or touch you, but I know you're here. Oh, we've got 20, excellent. So we've got about 30 people in total. Brilliant. So this workshop, Evolving Career Development Practice to Remain a Sustainable Profession, was conceived around thinking about where are we as a profession at this point in time, and there is a huge amount of debate about whether we are a profession, what defines a profession, and I was delivering a lecture in Edinburgh about this 2 weeks ago. But I think a lot of the things when we talk about profession also link us to sustainability and what do we mean by sustainability. And I'm really keen to get yours and our colleagues online's views about that. And much of the literature, and I know Hans de Vos will be talking about this later, is very much focused on the individual and what their career might look like from a sustainability perspective. And a lot of the research talks about importance of interests, values, continued learning and adaptability. But what I want to do with this session is to focus more on us collectively and what does that collectivity look like for all of us, because it will work in different contexts, but there's a regardless of where we work, what connects us is much broader than what separates us. And I think it's really important for us to think about that from a careers perspective. So what I'm going to, is that working now? No. Right, let's try. Oh, I don't seem to be working, Michael. Sorry, technical hitch. That's not working either. Ah, we use that one then. Yep, okay, thank you. Where would we be without our IT? Our IT gurus. Thank you for that. So within this, I'm going to focus on sort of three particular things. One is examining professional identity of careers practitioners, and I want to use that as the lens through which to explore this particular topic area. And a lot of this comes from work that myself and Nalini did. We both did our doctorates on professional identity. And ironically, there was both of us and John Goff, and there was some work in New Zealand at the same time, all starting to think about, well, who are we? What do we think about ourselves as practitioners? How do we define ourselves within our context and define the work that we do? So myself and Nalini had sort of, crossed paths over many years. And eventually we put together a small funding bid to HECSU, the Higher Education Career Service Unit, to do a piece of research to explore what we wanted to understand really around what the 21st century HE careers professional might look like. This is looking at higher education as a case study. But I think most of the learning actually, does relate to regardless of whatever part of the sector you're in. And then finally, what I'm hoping we're going to be able to do is have some discussion about our evolving profession, because I think just listening to what both Chris and Claire were saying, and particularly Chris was saying about the importance of knowledge, and we know that our knowledge and our skill set have to evolve. I trained to be a careers advisor in the last century, a long, long time ago. And, for me as an example, though this won't mean anything, Jane is probably the only one this will mean anything to. But, we had cards that had a blue sticker and a pink sticker on them, and a box for the pink stickers and a box for the blue stickers. We wrote everything down. We dictated things down the phone. Our action plans were dictated down the phone. We didn't have computers. So just as a careers professional within my lifespan, the move to technology has been huge and taken our work to a whole new area. So as a profession, we have to evolve. As practitioners, we have to evolve. But it's an ethical imperative that we evolve as well. So what I'm keen to do is really to get your thoughts on that, because I think you'll have far more interesting things to say than I will about it. So I think it's helpful. I quite like to start with who are we as a profession? And again, this sits very closely with what Claire was talking about, is that importance of inequality. And we know that not everybody is fortunate enough to have the same opportunities. Young people, adults of all ages lack social and cultural capital. And that limits the opportunities and the life choices that they may have. And this is problematic for lots and lots of reasons, in terms of economy, in terms of exclusion, in terms of lack of opportunity, in terms of being able to have a sustainable personal life, professional life, work life. All of these things are issues. So the role of the careers professional, the career development professional, regardless of where they work, focuses on life transitions. To all intents and purposes, we're talking to our clients, our customers, however we define them, about their learning, work and life choices. And understanding from a theoretical and practice perspective about what informs and supports effective life choices is important. And we've talked again this morning about the world of work. That's what we talk about all the time. But we know it is changing. We know it has changed. Even in the last 4 years, all of our work lives have changed in some way. But as a profession, we are committed to social justice, inclusion, widening access, raising expectations and life choices. And our role is around attempting as best we can within the resourcing that we have to address some of those deficits of social and cultural capital and create agency and self-efficacy. We are the person that has the best understanding of the world of work. We are the person that has the best understanding of what knowledge individuals might need to help them make their choices. Oh, I pressed the wrong buttons. Right, so let's try going back again. No, you want to go forward. Try that. All right. Okay, apologies. You've seen the next 6 slides in rapid succession, so I'll just skip over them because you know what I'm going to say. But the point I want to make is that we have an incredibly important role in life, and it is often underestimated, it is often undervalued, and more importantly, it's often misunderstood. And that's one of the things I want us to look at. Okay, so defining career professional identity. As I said, I want to use the lens of professional identity to explore this. And the definition I've used is my definition because I can, and I'm up here, and it's mine. But I do like this. There are loads out there. Please go and read lots of them. But for me, the bit that I want us to focus on today is how we communicate what we do to others. And that, I think, is our biggest issue as a profession. And I know I will hear this from colleagues online as well, and I hear it all the time, people don't understand who we are and what we do. And we've been here 100 years. I've been doing this job 35 years. You know, Jane's been around for about 80. You know, we've been here a long time, haven't we, Jane? You know, and still we're having exactly the same conversations with policymakers, with employers, with parents, with schools, with a whole range of people, with fellow professionals in aligned industries about what is it that we do. And I think that is a real issue for us. So just to sort of contextualise this a little bit, I'm just going to show you a slide with some of my research, and then I'm going to show you some of Nalini's around CPD. So the research that I did, and I was collecting data probably in about 2012. So it was at the time when the careers profession in England was basically imploding. It was absolutely destroyed by government policy. Connections had been dismantled, and it was, here you go, schools, you do it, without any resource, without any expertise, without any guidance. So the whole lot was in great disarray. My research talked to lots of people. So it wasn't just schools people or connections people. It was adults, it was private sector employers, it was people who worked in training within the career sector. And what was common to all of those people is that they were all investing in themselves. They were doing a master's degree and they were investing in their own development. And I could talk to you for hours, but I won't because we haven't got the time. But what came out of the research, which I feel was really interesting, that aligned all of those contexts, was that client focus was the most important thing. Claire talked about this earlier. And again, this solidifies us all, regardless of practice of where we are. The specialist knowledge that people felt that they brought was part of their identity, and being able to differentiate what they do from what other colleagues might do, perhaps in further education, for example, or in universities. What is it that they brought that was specialist to them as a qualified professional careers practitioner? Ethics aligned people as well. Everybody worked to a code of ethics, regardless of which of the context, and they were shared ethics. You know, and I think we talk a lot about them, and I think we need to talk more about our ethics. And then the other two parts were around the personal attributes, and that was very much about the passion that they brought. Everybody comes into the career sector, and I've done quite a lot of research on why people come into the career sector, and it's often as a second, third, fourth, fifth career, end of career. It's because they're passionate about making a difference in people's lives. They're altruistic. They want to help. They want to use the skills and knowledge that they've got to facilitate others. And then the professional attributes were very much around the skill set that we developed, the tactics, the techniques that we're able to offer, and the approaches that we use. So a lot of commonality within all of those. And then there's a whole load of other stuff there. Common job titles, major issue. Again, it's something we've looked at. Location of practice. People define themselves on who they worked with. So they didn't see themselves generically as a careers professional. They saw themselves as a university careers advisor, as a connections advisor, as an adult advisor, and never should those meet. And I think, again, that is a major issue for us. I think that lack of connectivity really undermines our strength as a profession. And we've done a lot in the last 10 years with the development of the Career Development Institute to address that, which is our professional body. So I've talked about ethics, common initial training, a huge issue again for us, lots of fragmentation, investment in CPD, communities of practice, societal recognition. That is a big one. If you look at any of the definitions around professional identity and about professionalisation, societal recognition, That is something we have struggled with time and time again. And I do collect articles in magazines of famous people saying, well, when I talked to my careers advisor at school, they told me not to go into acting, and really what I should do is train to be a teacher. And they are so common. Those stories are so common. So a set of characteristics that all of these people potentially subscribe to. However, they define themselves differently depending on their context. So Nalini's work was particularly with universities and practitioners in universities. And the focus of hers identified that people felt quite undefined as a professional within a university context. And I don't think that's any different to if you work in schools. I mean, when I was a schools careers advisor, and I've been a university careers advisor. I've worked in universities for years. And I talked to academics and they went, what, you've got a qualification to do this? You've got a master's degree, really? You know, when I was at school, it was one step up from the dinner lady or the cleaner. You know, you were in that bracket of you come in and you deliver a service, you clean the classroom, you go home. You come in, you talk to the kids and you go. So that lack of definition was quite problematic. And again, linked to this fragmentation around qualification and perceived relevance. And I want you to hang on to that perceived relevance bit. Again, locally focused. Again, we do get this. This is very specific to university careers. It is, you know, about your particular university, how you work, your student group. There's a whole range of reasons for that, you know, not up for debate or discussion at all today, particularly. But often, the work was quite isolated. It wasn't necessarily always connected to wider university agendas. There's been quite a lot of shift on that. And again, Nalini will have been collecting this data probably about 10 years ago. People felt unrecognised. There was a lack of understanding of their role, and often they drew credibility from other things that they did in life or other roles that they'd had in terms of being a careers professional. And also job titles. Job titles comes up ever such a lot. And we've done a piece of research in iCeGS probably about 8-10 years ago, and we analysed, we picked a month and we analysed every job description that came out for a careers practitioner, regardless of where it was. And we analysed over 200 job descriptions. We found over 100 different job titles. And again, that fragmentation, that is problematic for us. And within higher education, I was talking to a careers advisor in a university yesterday that's not that far from where I work. And I said, well, you've got a new job title, because it came up, and her new job title was careers account manager. I was like, what on earth does that mean? She said, I know, it's dreadful, isn't it? So I'm not sure we're going to keep it. But that aligns with our business account manager, our HR account manager. They're doing to you what they're doing. Then you need to do something about this. This is not good. She says, hopefully it might not stick. But I thought, that's it. You know, it's like they can't understand the role. So they're trying to homogenise it within other university roles as well. So people felt unconfident, differentiation of qualifications and job titles, as we said, and people were often reluctant to say what they did. You know, I mean, I've always been the case that I never tell anybody I work in careers at a party, because people will always say to you in the same way they do to a doctor, oh, I'm really glad I met you. It'd be really good to get I'm thinking about changing my career. What do you think I should do about this? Like, not interested. I'm here to have a good time. But again, similarities with mine, that dedication, that passion about helping students and commitment to the role. So this profession, regardless of where you're working, is very much built on people's commitment and passion. So we got this piece of I've got a small bit of funding in 2020 or probably 2019 to do this research project. So when I tell you the dates of it, it will all start making sense. So we started collecting data in February 2020. What happened then? So we weren't able to collect as much of the data as we'd wanted, but the methodology qualitative study, and we were collecting data from, we defined the university into 4 particular groups. These are very specific. Russell Group is the big research universities. Pre-92, or those are red brick ones that have been around for quite a long time. Post-92 is where I come from. They're what we used to call the old polys, the old polytechnics as were, and then specialist HE, so that might be about arts, music, something like that. So we collected data from the 4 institutions, 4-stage methodology, literature review, focus groups. We weren't able to do all the focus groups because the world collapsed at that point in time, and surveys, we didn't get as many survey responses as we'd wanted. We were able eventually to do some interviews, but unfortunately this is the time when every career service was going online and they were trying to manage, so not unsurprising we weren't able to actually capture as much data as we'd hoped. One of the theories we were interested in, and this came through some of Nalini's research, was around Celia Whitchurch. The Celia Whitchurch does most of her research around universities, but she has done a lot in the career space as well. And what she was identifying in her research was that there were increasingly these, what she calls third space professionals, of these new spaces developing and evolving, where practitioners who may have been quite defined in, I work in careers, I work in student services, I work in, I don't know, academic support services, I work in alumni, I work in marketing, that these were starting to become a little bit merged, and the parameters around these were changing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that with some of our research. So the role of careers advisors sort of fitted quite well into this from what we were seeing about how careers professionals were both seeing themselves, how they felt they were being perceived, and about how the role was evolving within universities. So she sort of defined these within bounded professionals, which is a very clear set of parameters around what you do. So probably me as a university careers advisor, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe. Cross-boundary, where you're working perhaps across a number of different areas. Unbounded, you do whatever you like, and blended is everybody's doing the same, basically. That's in a nutshell. It is actually a robust evidence base for this, but we don't really have the time to go into it today. But it offered a useful sort of theoretical perspective to see where our careers professionals' roles might be changing and how they might be evolving. So just to give you a little bit of background on who was involved. So we had 86 responses. Nearly over 55% had worked within university career services for between 5 and 10 years. And it's also worth thinking about that higher education in England changed in that the fees came in, and that absolutely, utterly has changed the whole dynamic in universities. We feel that it is perceived more as a transaction, and we could spend a whole load of lectures about, you know, students coming in, saying to us, what's the minimum I need to do just to get through this? Or I've paid my money, I expect my degree. As we always say, it's like going to the gym. I can pay for a gym membership, but it don't mean I'm going to lose weight and get fit if I don't attend. But, you know, so there had been a lot of change in university career services over this time. Interesting, the responses we got, 2/3 came from the traditional Russell Group universities and 1/3 from the post-92s and specialists. The sort of differentiation of gender, not unsurprising. We know it's a very female-dominated profession, less so in higher education than in other parts of the sector. And we asked people about the qualifications. So as Nalini's research talked a little bit earlier, was about this fragmentation, this lack of clarity about relevance qualification. So not everybody's got a professional qualification. There isn't actually necessarily a requirement. And many people do go into university careers work, having come from industry, graduate recruitment, and then trained to be a careers advisor. They come in from loads of different discipline areas. This is the data that really interested us, though. So what we found is that people working in careers were actually investing in teaching qualifications. So the FHEA is the Higher Education Academy. And if you work in a university and you teach, you have to have this. So if you go get a job at a university in England tomorrow, you will have to do a version of this. You have to have a qualification. It's mostly apprenticeships now. I wonder why that is. Maybe to do with the levy. But practitioners were actually focusing more on getting teaching qualifications than they were getting guidance qualifications. That really, really interested us. And 20% are at fellow, which is the level that most people would go in at, but 11.5% had other teaching qualifications as well. So how do careers professionals define and describe their role? So again, some interesting thoughts came out here. Most respondents describe their role as supporting. They see themselves as a supporter. Young people's career development, students' career development and their planning, and navigating the recruitment process. So a lot of it was one-to-one, but this was seen as resource intensive, but valued, but not by everybody. They did a lot of workshop activities, and increasingly the work was being embedded in careers education within the curriculum in lots of different ways. So whether it's actually built in as formally as an assessed part of the curriculum, an employability module, or integrated in other ways, the curriculum focus of the role has become an important part of the practice. And practitioners saw that their role, the extension of their student-facing role into academic consultancy, they were working more with academics. Employability agendas be huge in higher education because of the metrics. We get measured on the metrics and we're found wanting regularly. And working in partnership with academics and senior stakeholders. So the roles were often becoming more strategic roles that are around developing and shaping student support rather than direct delivery. And interestingly, some other research I'd done about why people come into HE careers, the frustration for many of those people was that was the job they were being asked to do, was actually they wanted to sit down and talk to students on a one-to-one and do the counselling bit. And that wasn't necessarily as priority as they had hoped. So this move towards strategic work and the focus on employability has resulted in growing numbers located in faculty. So we've got a decentralisation within a number of university career services as well. And their roles were increasingly around focusing on metrics. So active engagement in teaching and learning, really important. Okay, so what expertise do they bring? We asked them to rank them. And interestingly, the curriculum and development and teaching came much lower down than what we would consider is our core expertise. So practitioners were still saying, this is our expertise, but the role they were describing themselves doing was actually quite different. And some of the people we spoke to really didn't like the term careers advisor. They thought that was reductionist. It didn't describe the job that they do. That consultant was much better because that more reflected this strategic job that they've done. And I suppose if you're working in schools, I can see this from career leaders. You know, we have this new role of career leaders in schools in England, and that's a strategic role. A lot of careers advisors are doing that role as well as possibly being a careers advisor. So we're starting to see some of that movement perhaps happening in schools as well. So I'd be keen to hear from colleagues, you know, their thoughts on that. But we asked them about how they feel their role has changed over the last 10 years. So bearing in mind this focus on metrics, this change in funding that we've got. So those involved in higher education for a long period of time, that the role had evolved, and individual focus from on one-to-one, but also much more strategic focus. They were responding more directly to academic departments. So who's the customer? Who's the client now? And again, we've often had that debate around funding. Who pays for funding? Are they the client? You know, and again, that's something we could spend quite a lot of time talking about. This quote really, you know, surprised me in some ways. People don't like the breadth. They like to want to do the one-to-one and the odd group work. Yes.
On the first one, you're saying strategic emphasis. Do you maybe have an example? Is that, for instance, that if a student thinks of leaving the university program, that you're trying to keep them in, so to avoid dropouts?
Yeah, could be. Can we just use the microphone? And can you just say who you are and where you're from?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Marlies and I work at the Technical University in Delft. And my question refers to the first bullet point, the strategic emphasis. Could you give an example? I was just thinking, is this, for example, a student comes to us with a question about, you know, is this the right fit for me, this university program? Is this that a strategic focus could be to keep them in so that we avoid a dropout?
Yes, it could be, but it's more likely to be that that the careers team would be involved in building an employability strategy with the department, particularly for departments that are highly vocational. So they'd be working on how can they encourage, how can the department, how can the careers practitioner work with them to get better destinations, because universities get measured on what jobs students go into. And there is an expectation that our students will go into graduate jobs. And if the numbers don't go into graduate jobs, there's a big issue about how graduate jobs are defined. You know, so, I mean, one of the challenges we've got in my university is we do a lot of work with early years students, so who teach in nurseries and do, you know, preschool work. Their jobs aren't considered graduate, even though they've got a degree, and some of them have a master's degree. That's not considered a graduate job. So the strategic work is likely to be about how you can increase the employability of the students to get jobs that will fit the graduate outcome measures. And if you're able to do that, that then contributes to other metrics. So the universities also have what's called the Teaching Excellence Framework, which were assessed again on graduate outcomes. We have the National Student Survey, which comes out every year, and they look at graduate outcomes in relation to the experience. So the challenge is that universities are measured on a lot of spurious metrics, but the University Career Service can actually help those departments in building strategies to meet those metrics. So the work is, it's almost gamification. It's gamification of higher education rather than, and I think that's the interesting point about the role being perhaps more strategic and less about sitting down with a student who is thinking of leaving, and how might you help them to think about, is that the best choice for them at this point? Are there other options they can consider? So there's quite a gulf, I think, this research was suggesting. Anyway, we'll move on because I'm conscious of time. So yeah, strong focus on employability workshops, as I've said, working more with academics, key things that people are involved with. So, oh, we've done that one. Right, let's try and go forward instead of backwards. They never gave me the, well, they did give me the training session. I just didn't listen, did I? Basically. we're on to the last couple of slides here. So we asked them about how their role might evolve. And they felt that it would be greater focus on disadvantaged students. So again, we were talking earlier about that importance of being able to meet to targeted support. We've got huge issues around attainment gaps between white students and minority ethnic students. International, we won't even go there. That is just a whole different kettle of fish at the moment. Alumni, working with alumni could be something. Greater focus on data-driven approaches. Again, what Claire was saying earlier about using the data that's available. A greater expectation to demonstrate impact. So what difference are they making to the university and how can that be quantified? Online, greater flexibility. A lot of that came actually just by default through COVID anyway. That a lot of the type of services that went online, actually students were more likely to engage than if they physically had to come into the career centre. So most of them did feel, you know, if we add that together, we've got 79% felt that their professional identity was changing. So they've seen the role very much evolving. And some people like that. Some people really welcome that strategic focus. They felt it gave a greater credibility. And we sort of have the debate in the report about sort of quasi-academics, and the practitioners felt greater value aligning themselves more with the academic department than they did with the career sector. And again, that is, you know, I've not gone through it today, but a lot of the research talked about lack of value, lack of understanding, etc. Okay, so, oh, is that going there? No. There we go. So final thoughts from the research. These are just some quotes that I thought sort of elaborate. Oh dear, oh God, that's appalling. How did I allow that to happen? Oh, I'm sorry about that. It's dreadful. I can't even blame a young child. Okay, so you can see how the agendas are coming in here. Increased focus on graduate employability. Our role has got increased importance within the university. We're more respected for our professional competence rather than just checking CVs. If you look at the National Career Service and the adult provision, that is what the National Career Service is seen as, a CV checking service. Hugely frustrating for the practitioners who work in it. They've changed their perceptions of careers as being just about checking CVs. Justice in there. Really undermine, you know, checking a CV is an important thing. This is what gets people jobs. Just. Interesting terminology there. I won't go into conversation analysis on this. And regards us as experts and specialists in graduate employability. So this sort of transition is really quite interesting. Role shift from individual IAG, information, advice and guidance, dominant to supporting academics. There's still a notion careers guidance and coaching can be done by anybody with little training, because often they were getting graduate students to do the CV checking for them. Less consultation or involvement in decisions. So some challenges. So you've heard me, you've heard what I've got to offer on this. What I'd like us to do, I've got 3 questions here. And I'd like, we've got about 20 minutes, so about 17, 18 minutes. And it's very precise, 17 or 18 minutes. We're going to get our colleagues online, if that's okay, lovely Emma, to, or Michael, lovely Michael. We're going to put them into, we've got 21, so if we put them into 3 groups, that would be really good. And if we could do with a group here, we've got 2 groups. And I'd like, if you can, I'd like your thoughts on those 3 questions. If you don't have the time, or you prefer to focus on one, think about the first one. That's the one I'm really interested in, about how do we help other people, others to understand our work? Because I think that is part of the whole sustainability. If we can get people to understand what we do, what we bring to the table, that gives us sustainability in terms of the future of our work. Ideally, I'd love you to have some thoughts on all 3 questions. And particularly, I've said 5 key points. I'm not being that precise. You know, if you've got 3 key points, that's fine. If you've got 7, that's brilliant. But if we could come back probably at about 20 past, and just get some thoughts from the groups, that would be really good. Our colleagues online, can we ask somebody to sort of take a few notes and feedback as well? Emma, Michael? Is that okay? Yep, lovely. It would be good to hear from them as well. Okay, so please do start.
I'm Kenny. I'm used to use from Canada. I work in quasi-academic university, and I'm a British engineering. So I've been an advisor, consultant. I was a director of my business services related, all while shifting towards being a faculty member in education. So I say on both sides, which has been really useful to hear about. That's something like practice for about 25 years and then some years ago we worked with different issues into
and the shifting identity that you were talking to us about. So we did acknowledge that that people can sometimes feel stuck, or they can feel the temptation to transition to a more strategic role, but actually then bounce back. And we were interested in why that is and what is it that keeps people there. We did talk about some international differences about how we define the terms and the job titles, and the fact that in some places, we had a great example of where people are dealing with individuals directly in front of them, and that's their role. So it is purely around providing a service to the client who is in front of them, so very individualized. But also acknowledging that that brings some challenges around visibility of the function, and maybe a different balance around strategic and tactical, or the strategic and operational elements might be useful. And then one of the things we're talking about is how do you get that scalability and that visibility of the work, and acknowledging that with certain groups, it's not completely individualistic. So how do you get the right balance between scalability? So for example, on identifying the top 20 questions or the top 20 things that people are working on, and giving them some clues about that. So not assuming that everybody has to start from scratch with every topic, but also then having a degree of personalization so it's relevant to their context. So yeah, it was a great conversation. So I definitely recognize the transition that's going on, but also some of the challenges that go with it.
Okay. Was there anything that came up in the group about strategies for helping to dispel some of the opaqueness or the lack of understanding or misunderstanding about the work that we do? Is there anything that came up around that in particular? Thanks.
So I think one of the things we talked about was alignment, and in the context of a higher education institution, aligning the imperatives of the career service to the imperatives of the student experience, function to, the work of the academics, to align into desirable graduate outcomes, and creating that kind of commonality of value creation. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. So we'll go over, I'll take the mic over to the other group. So who's our spokesperson? Bring it round.
Okay, we had various conversations, and we did, I think, focus primarily on the first one. I think what we were very aware of was something to do with we started talking about goals, and then we got onto agendas, and then we talked about how often as careers people, despite being very reflexive and reflective, we don't always transition that into our language and how we discuss things with other people, and actually trying to put more work, I think, into looking at our stakeholders, what are their agendas, not assuming they're homogenous as well. So Candy was talking about having lots of conversations, proper real life conversations with people, forming alliances, working across areas like wellbeing and careers work, but also with academic staff, not assuming, obviously, that they don't always follow the managerial line, as we know, and what they say and what they do are not always the same things necessarily, which is fine. And so recognizing that actually, what is their true agenda to create change and to help them understand what we do. Is there anything else we felt? So I thought language is important. We're talking about student success, often equaling career, perhaps as well as some other things like well-being and so on. Any other thoughts? No?
What's really interesting about what you talked about there is, I think one of the successes, whether you like it or not, of the Gatsby benchmarks is about commonality of language and terminology. And it's been successful because, we did the evaluation of the implementation of it in the North East. We're now 3,000 schools in England use them. There is loads of data that suggests that the benchmarks are helping disadvantaged young people to be more career ready. But what employers said was that they gave them a structure for working with schools, and they gave teachers, head teachers, careers professionals, career leaders, and employers a common set of terms that everybody understood. And that has been a gap I think, for us, because I think, you know, you talked about language and about stakeholders understanding their agendas and how we can support those agendas, I think is really, really central to that. Because I think, you know, having worked in different types of career services over the years, and I know you've been, you know, this month we're going to go out and talk to employers. We're going to talk to employers. We use our language, we use our jargon, and it doesn't mean anything, you know. So again, it is moving it on, but we have that challenge around consistency about what we talk about. Sorry, it's yours to add. Come in.
I just wanted to add in really that I think the most important thing leading on from what you're saying there is that we are at the table when that language is discussed.
Yes.
We don't want that imposed on us.
I totally agree.
And so, because language is power
Yes.
at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah. No, we've seen that with connections, and that didn't do us very well at all, you know, because connections wasn't a term we used. The word career got eradicated from the lexicon of our practice for a number of years. That's not acceptable. Emma, are we ready yet for the online group?
Thanks very much.
Thank you, online group, for your contributions. Really interesting discussion going on.
So hopefully I'm capturing what everybody said. So we talked a lot about the first question, so understanding of the role, and felt really that the term careers advisor just doesn't really cut it. It doesn't really, it's the tip of the iceberg really. So we talked about wanting to get below the waterline, and about the work that you do around the lives, motivations, challenges, influences, and that's just not captured within the title. So generally people think about, as you were saying, that it's about, can you just get me a job or a new job, and it's about people matching from the title. So thinking that career development practitioner and career guidance practitioner works a bit better. But also talked really about how it depends on the setting. So feeling that the schools really understand the role a lot better. Universities understand it, but particularly if you frame it in the sense of a consultant, they kind of understand it a bit better. And we were talking really about it's adults, it's the adult sector that really find that difficult to understand. So Career Scotland have created a video about what they do to try and help inform people about, it's about here to listen and here to understand you. And we talked a lot about harnessing the media, which I think was where you came in, and we talked about how getting in like as a kind of agony aunt type slot on some programs or something might help people to understand a bit
Good
more.
morning.
Good morning,
Like
yes, good morning. So to really try and raise awareness about what a careers advisor does. And we also talked about how to perhaps get feedback from clients and users, and use their feedback, their voice, to explain what you do as well. So found that quite useful. So sort of about, you know, reviewing options or the distance travelled. And then we talked a little bit about sustainability, and we talked about it from sustainability in terms of practice with an individual and over their life course, but also sustainability of the individual practitioners, and about how things are becoming a bit more fragmented in terms of less central. So you have people that are perhaps freelance and working for themselves, and how they may miss that ability to connect with each other and learn and advise each other and keep their knowledge up to date. So how that might be better supported. So hopefully I did everything
That's
justice.
brilliant, thank you. And anybody who's heard me speak before on this topic will know that I always use this example, so I apologise if you've heard it before. But back in the mid-2000s in England, I think we did in Scotland as well, in Wales, we had a national telephone guidance service. And it was funded by the latest government, Quango, we had that at that time. But they had a brilliant advertising campaign that was about jigsaws and people having bits missing out of them. And these adverts came on in the middle of Coronation Street, which is one of our soap operas, 3 times a week, right in the middle, when you're going to get your biggest viewing figures. And people would say, ring up, you want to change your life, you want to change your career, you need to get a new qualification, ring us, dial us now. That service was open 7 days a week, till 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. triaged practice, and was delivered in, I think, either 7 or 8 community languages. That was some of the best work we did. We have none of that now. It has gone, as these things do, because they evolve, not always in a good way. But the point being, that brought careers into normal conversation. It normalised it. The challenge we've got is careers is always on the periphery. It's on the outside. It's in that room over in that part of the school. And a lot of the work that you know, as Emma was saying from the online team, schools get it a bit more because there's been a lot of work done over the last 5, 6, 7 years to integrate careers so that it's part of the whole school infrastructure. But how we do that in other ways, I think higher education's actually doing quite well on that. Totally agree with the points on HE. So just to draw to a close, because we've got 1 minute and I can hear lunch coming already. Just this is a piece of research that Jenny Bimrose and Alan Brown did a couple of years ago, and it just pulls together some really interesting work in this study about identity and what contributes to it. It's a really interesting study to look at, but they talk about the importance of personal agency, and I totally agree with that. You know, as a profession, we can't keep blaming everybody else for why we're not getting where we need to be. We do have to do something about that ourselves. But also the careers narrative, that's our professional narrative, and how do we make that accessible to people who aren't coming from our part of the sector or have our language. They talk a lot about like ongoing skill development, about we need to do more across the context. We need to see ourselves collectively as a profession, regardless of where you're working at, and find ways of working together. We talk a lot in higher education about interdisciplinary work and interdisciplinary research. We don't do it in our own sector. We're very good at telling other people how to do it. We're less good at doing it ourselves. And, you know, making sense of what we're doing. They took there's a bit in there as well, some of their work about storytelling in careers. And again, I quite like that. It's something I'd be interested in exploring a bit more on that day that I have a bit more time. So these are just a few thoughts from me about what needs to be in place. It's not definitive in any way, shape or form. And as you can see, I've run out of space in the end, but there's lots more you could add. You are it, people who are passionate about what we do. That is where the sustainability is. The fact that we have so many people who want to do this job, who recognise there are challenges, but they want to make a difference to other people's lives. That is part of our sustainability. Strong leadership is one of our biggest issues. People don't want to be leaders. All the research I ever do is that there's no career progression. I have to become a leader. Well, if you become a leader, you can contribute to the future direction. You know, in iCeGS, we train careers professionals as we deliver the qualification career development, and we position it as the future thought leaders for our sector. That's what we want, and we need good leadership for that. So we need to, I think this piece of work needs to be done about leadership in careers. We need to have more consistency. We can't have 100 odd job titles. We can't have, you know, changing the name of the job and the centre every other week. That does not help. That does not help us in any way, shape or form. We need to be evidencing impact. You know, our speakers earlier today talked about that. We do change people's lives. We're really bad at capturing that. You know, it can give you lots of data on it, but actually those rich stories of people's lives and being able to use those, and whether it's doing an agony aunt thing on, you know, on the radio or on the TV, absolutely brilliant. We need to take responsibility. It's a collective thing. We all have to contribute to this. We need to recognise and promote our expertise rather than fitting and, you know, trying on other people's expertise. We need to talk about what is it that we do that makes a difference, not just taking, you know, becoming a quasi-academic or whatever it happens to be, because that feels as if it has more credibility. I think that's a whole different discussion that it would be very useful for us to have. What differentiates us from other professions as well? I think we're not always very good at that. We tend to align ourselves. We're a bit like, we do a bit of this, we do a bit of that, you know. We really need to be clear about what it is that we offer. We need to embrace technology. There's always been a big issue in careers about technology. I have talked to so many careers advisors over the years who, you know, oh, you can't do telephone, you can't do guidance online. Oh, no, you can't. Yes, you can. You can do it. You can do it in loads of different ways. It's not all about you as the practitioner, and that's the problem. Much of this comes down to what is the preference for the practitioner, not what the client preference is. Let's go back to being client-centred on this. What is in the best interest of the client? We do need societal recognition, and we need value from policymakers, and that's about having good policy, coherent policy, about having national frameworks, as Claire was saying, and about a real sense and understanding of what we do and how we make a difference in the private sector, with employers, in prisons, through the trade unions, through schools, through colleges, through universities, through all the contexts that we work, public employment service, voluntary community sector. We need diversification of the workforce. It can't continue to look like me, because that is what it looks like. It needs to evolve. We need to have people who represent and reflect the students that they're working with. And we need decent work conditions. That is a challenge. That is a major challenge. So we do need to do that. And as I can see that other people are standing outside now, and I am now 5 minutes over, there are references. If anybody would like a copy of the slides, please do get in touch with me. They will probably be on the NICEC website anyway. Thank you all for your contributions. It's been really interesting hearing your thoughts. Thank you.
And finally, thank you, Siobhan, for a very stimulating conversation. I'm sure online as well, it sounded like you had a really great one. And there you go, you've got a few rounds of applause up there. It's actually, I believe people are there. Yeah, exactly. Oh, there you go. So yeah, thank you everybody for your participation. I believe we are now breaking for
lunch, which will be in the room next door. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know.